Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome Professor Kartik Hosanagar, a renowned expert in technology and digital business. Kartik is a professor of operations, information and decisions at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania and the author of the acclaimed book, A Human's Guide to Machine Intelligence. He also hosts a new podcast called Creative Intelligence, which we will discuss later in the episode. He is an 11th-time recipient of Teaching Excellence Awards at the Wharton School and has been recognized as one of the world's top 40 business professors under 40. Kartik's work focuses on how algorithms are profoundly shaping our choices, our businesses, and even our identities. In this episode, we unpack the rise of algorithmic decision making, the ethical challenges of AI, and what the future might look like when machines not only support our lives, but start making decisions on our behalf. From filter bubbles and bias to AI in the workplace, this is a wide-ranging and timely conversation about how to stay human in the age of artificial intelligence. Kartik, welcome to the IJK Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Imad.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Let's dive in. Kartik, there's no doubt that AI is reshaping the way we do business today. Could you walk us through how this shift is happening and share a few examples?
Yeah, look, I guess if you look at the last 20, 30 years, you could say 20 years ago, internet reshaped business in a big way. We've obviously seen all those changes, whether it was, books and electronics, how they're bought and purchased, going all the way to including how communication is done on social media or meetings and so on. I think we're in the middle of a very similar wave with AI, where there's a lot of hype today. And in terms of what has actually happened in reality, there's a few things, but it's really pockets of impact. But if we project out over the next 10 years, I think the impact is likely to be big, extremely big. So in terms of the few pockets of impact, some things that well before ChatGPT that we're already seeing, for example, is algorithmic curation of our world. So for example, you go to YouTube, an algorithm, usually AI-based algorithms are figuring out what content to put in front of us. And in fact, the evidence suggests that 90% of what we watch on YouTube is influenced by algorithmic recommendations. On Amazon, again, recommendations are suggesting products for us to buy. People who bought this also bought that, and so on. And research, again, suggests that as much as about 30% of products purchased on Amazon are influenced by algorithmic recommendations. You go to platforms like Netflix, again, 80% of media hours that people are consuming are shaped by algorithmic recommendations. Spotify, all these settings. So they're already shaping the media we consume, the products we buy. And at the end of the day, who are we as a person or an individual? It's shaped to a large extent by what we read, what we consume, what we buy, and AI is shaping all of that. Outside of that, I think we're also starting to see how people are starting to integrate ChatGPT in their work, in their lives, or AI tools in general. And so that's a big shift. One of the biggest shifts that's happening right now is in coding itself. At most of the major large tech companies like Google, Amazon, and others, they're already talking about 30% of code being written by AI systems. And projecting that the rate of change is so rapid, they're talking about, 80, 90% of the code being written by AI in 12 months. Now, I'm not sure I buy the 90%. In fact, the founder of Anthropic said 100% of the code will be written by AI in 12 months. I'm not sure it's happening that fast, but I think the rate at which things are changing, whether it's 80%, 90%, 100%, we can debate, but it'll be more than half the code being written by AI for sure.
I see. Definitely big changes are coming. So, Kartik, let's talk a bit about how algorithms impact our daily lives. And let's talk mostly about consumer behavior for now. So how do algorithms shape our choices? And this is often without us even realizing it.
Yes, it's most often without us realizing it. So most of us, if we are asked, who's making our choices, we feel we have all got agency in this. We are making our choices on our own. But the algorithms are nudging us in very subtle ways that we don't fully realize. I already mentioned examples of media consumption on YouTube, on Netflix. I talked about how even product purchases on Amazon are influenced by algorithmic recommendations. Going beyond that, in terms of how AI and algorithms are shaping our choices, I'll mention a couple examples of this. So there was a study done by researchers at Facebook a few years ago, and they looked at specifically whether choices they make with the news feed can influence people's decisions to vote, for example. And so the way this was done is that for a big chunk of users, their newsfeed was the usual newsfeed, no big changes in the newsfeed algorithm. But for another group of users, they changed the newsfeed to show more hard news. So meaning the algorithm intentionally chose political news stories to share with these people, as opposed to the usual, let's say, my cat dancing kind of video, right? And so they looked at what is the difference between these two groups in terms of the fraction of these users who suggested that they went and voted. And what they found was in their study was that the voter turnout actually increased quite dramatically from just this basic nudge. And it wasn't even a nudge saying, go vote, but it was quite simply just letting these people see more hard news stories. And the change in the voting turnout percentage, this was a few years ago. This was actually if I recollect correctly, this was the Trump-Hillary Clinton election. Or no, in fact, I think it could be the one before that. I'm forgetting which election this was. But the change in percentage was enough that, it was greater than the margin by which a candidate won. For example, you look at the Trump-Hillary Clinton election and you look at the margin there, small percentage changes can in fact change the outcome of elections. And what they found was that just changing the news feed increased voter turnout by percentage that's enough that can influence the election. Now, to be clear, the study did not try to nudge people one way or the other, meaning to vote Republican or vote Democrat. They were just like, can we increase the voter turnout? And it was a study with a few million users that they did. But imagine this happening at scale, and what we are watching, what we're consuming is shaping our opinions. It's shaping who we vote for. Another study actually changed the newsfeed algorithms where some people were seeing more happy news, some people were seeing more sad news. And what that study showed that it affected the mood of the people themselves. So when they changed somebody's newsfeed algorithm, it changed their mood, which in turn changed the kinds of posts they were also putting out there. So I think the short answer is huge evidence that algorithmic curation of our world influences the choices we make in terms of what we consume, what we buy. It in fact is even at the level of shaping our moods, shaping potentially election outcomes to the extent that a platform decides they want to have a role in that.
Mm-hmm. I see. Kartik, you talk about the concept of filter bubbles. What exactly is a filter bubble, and why should consumers be aware of that, of these filter bubbles?
Yeah, filter bubble is the idea that we are all potentially living in a bubble, an information bubble, where we don't see the full amount of information out there. We see some subset of it. Now, we've always been in some sort of an information bubble. That information bubble was probably shaped by, to some extent, maybe our families, what kinds of views they have, what kinds of things the family exposes us to. But then also shaped by things like historically the news. We all used to get a newspaper home. We used to watch maybe a news program. It would be shaped by that. But generally, that old form of information source was a broadcast medium. It was the same information broadcast to everyone. And that broadcaster had to cater to multiple perspectives. And so it provided a range of views. So if we picked up the newspaper, we got a range of views. We got a range of stories covered and a range of perspectives in there. If we watched the news on TV 20, 30 years ago, we got a range of perspectives. So filter bubble is the idea that we're moving increasingly to algorithmic filters that are curating our information for us. So, for example, again, the news we watch and consume is not coming from a newspaper that's perhaps sharing a range of perspective. It is shaped by our Facebook news feed or our LinkedIn or Twitter news feed, where certain news stories that are being shared by people show up in our feed. The question is which ones show up in our news feed, because millions of people around the world are posting news stories and news opinions on Twitter and other places, on YouTube and things like that. But if the algorithms are designed to personalize what they show to our past preferences, past interests, and so on, which is what they do, then we see more and more of what we, already know, or an opinion we already have, or a perspective that we already have. And the algorithms are going to share more and more of that. And so we are ending up in a filter bubble where what we see is a reflection of perspectives and views that we already have, which actually narrows our horizons and doesn't allow us to expand our range of perspectives. And there is some evidence that with social news curation on YouTube and on Twitter and other settings, this is happening. It's happening for a few different reasons. It's happening because first, we make choices where on Twitter, who do we follow? We tend to follow people with similar opinions. And so the choices of who we follow makes the filter bubble, more narrow. But then the algorithmic curation further narrows it down, because the algorithm is looking at, out of these 1,000 news stories or 1,000 perspectives, I'm going to show these 10 because I know Imad has these kinds of interests and political views and he's likely to click on it. And so that's the filter bubble, where we're seeing a lot of polarization today in society, and algorithmic curation is contributing to that. The one last thing I want to mention on that is our research shows that it's not that hard to break the filter bubble if one designs the algorithms more carefully. And so designing the algorithms more carefully just involves, putting in some sources of diversity in the algorithm, making sure the algorithms are not just heavily biased on what people who have my similar views, what are they saying and what are they sharing, but to also add in some amount of other perspectives. But it's these algorithms can easily break that as well. But bottom line, today we do see evidence of some filter bubbles in the news world, specifically in social media.
I see. So can we think of a filter bubble also as a feedback loop? In a way, the more I like this or that topic or this or that point of view, the more I'm likely to receive similar content that are consistent with that point of view or with that topic.
Yeah, that is exactly right. That's a nice way to put it. It is very much a feedback loop where what I like, what I consume, influences the algorithm's decision of what to show me, which further influences what I like. And then we're stuck in this loop forever unless there is some intervention, either by the user, like I'm going to now start watching a few different kinds of things intentionally, or by the designer of the algorithm. Now I'm going to purposely introduce some variation in what I show to the user.
Got it. And behind this, big tech has done, this because they are just simply seeking more clicks and longer view times, right?
Yeah, look, I think big tech, especially on the consumer side, mostly is an ad-driven economy. And it's, as we call it, an attention economy. So the more time we spend on those sites, the more money they make. So their incentive is purely to figure out what keeps this user there the longest. And so then they're only focused on what is it we know this person will engage with, and let's show them more and more of that.
I see. I see. So this is obviously also part of this hyper personalization that we are currently seeing in digital marketing, right? So do you think at one point hyper personalization can cross the line into manipulation?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think not only can hyper personalization get into the realm of manipulation, I think we're already there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think we're already there. We're constantly being manipulated. There's a very thin line between advertising that is informative and advertising that is persuasive. And in fact, the goal of all advertising, including good advertising, is to inform and to persuade. And so, at some point, persuasion is also a little bit of preference manipulation. And so, well before the internet, well before big tech or any of these things we are discussing, the world of advertising did involve manipulating or persuading people. And by manipulation, I just mean changing your preferences and to get you to do something that on your own you might not have done, to create a preference for a product or create a need that you didn't think you have. And of course, now you're entering a realm where you've got such powerful tools and you can do this in the world of elections, behavior that is in not in the better interest of users. We see this with children. There's a lot of kids who would, if you ask them, like to actually reduce the time they're spending in front of screens, the time they're spending in front of games. They're not able to because these systems are designed to addict you because of these addiction of this attention economy. So they're already manipulating all of us to stay longer than we would.
I see. So in that scenario, which we are already living in, are we at risk of outsourcing too much of our decision making to those systems? And what are the risks? Like what is like the so maybe some things are okay to be outsourced to these decision making machines, but maybe some bigger decisions or more important decisions, having these machines and these algorithms influencing those decisions is probably problematic, right? So where do you see like, let's call it the red line where that we shouldn't cross?
Yeah, look, I think it's going to be a really interesting time now. We've just talked about how algorithms and AI are influencing consumer choices, whether it's products we buy, media we consume. Now we're entering a world where, you know, a recruiter is going to say there are tens or hundreds of thousands of job applications. I can't sit and read all of these. Can I have an algorithm process that and bring down the set of applicants down to a few people worth interviewing? Companies are also starting to bring AI into the interviewing process. Why have 10 of your people interview when AI can interview the applicant? And so we're definitely getting into the realm of hiring based on algorithmic evaluations. Candidates are also saying, I can do a lot of research and apply to 5, 10 jobs, or I can use these AI tools and have it apply to 500 jobs for me. And so this is then again encouraging the recruiters to say we need to use more AI because the applicants are too high and most are not even relevant for the job. Beyond hiring, now you've got, there are algorithms being used for some very critical decisions. Like there's been controversy about AI being used in courtrooms to guide judges in sentencing decisions. So those algorithms predict whether this defendant is likely to reoffend. And so then those calculations will help guide the judges on whether this person should get 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, things like that, or whether this person uh, should be released on bond during the hearing, all those kinds of decisions. And we're still at early stages because the vision that a lot of tech companies have is of an agentic future. And the idea of an agentic future is agents do everything. Agents make decisions on behalf of people or consumers as well on behalf of businesses. So you want to buy something, you don't even have to go and Go to Amazon, start the search, look at a few products, and then the algorithm is trying to nudge you. Instead, you have an AI agent where you just tell the agent, you know, I need to buy a new wallet, or I need to buy a watch. And the agent has done a lot of buying for you, has been tracking your behavior in the past, and therefore understands your preferences well enough. It'll go out there, it'll do the research, it will go to the different websites, it'll curate it down, bring it down to a simple choice. And the idea of agents is at some point you're so comfortable they'll just buy it, and you don't even have to verify and approve the purchase, it just shows up. So at some point we're going to be in a world where, tech is going to move us to this great place of convenience where we don't have to think before making choices. And I think we will have crossed that red line that you drew, which is one where, I think most of our choices will not be made in a mindful, intentional manner. It will be made for us by algorithms.
I see. So this leads us to the next topic on my list here, uh, and which is ethical considerations of AI. So, uh, bias is one of the big ethical concern when it comes to AI, especially when data scientists train those AI models. Correct. So, are biases in AI something that we cannot really avoid? They will always be there, but there are ways to minimize them.
Yeah, I think these systems always will have biases. I'll explain why in a moment. I also think that they can be minimized, and we have to, again, be very careful about why we are minimizing them and how we're minimizing them, but also um, why they're still in many cases better than humans when it comes to biases. So let me now back up and start with why they're biased. So if you look at modern AI, these are AI systems that are trained on lots of data. And where does that data come from? That data comes from choices human beings make. And human beings have biases. And so those biases are in the data used to train the AI, and therefore the AI picks up the biases. As an example, there was a story a few years ago about Amazon using AI for resumes screening to screen the job applicants. And their internal evaluation found that their AI had a gender bias. It was likely to reject a female applicant uh, more often than a male applicant, even with similar qualifications. And if you look at why that is the case, well, probably the bias is in the system. And there are people who have been not getting promoted, women who've not been getting promoted despite having the right qualifications. And if that has happened in the past, or have not been getting the job offers. So the system, the AI system, sees among all the job applicants for a given set of qualifications who's getting the job, who's getting promoted. And I need to find more people like the kind who have historically got job offers and who have historically got promotions. And so it then picks up a bias if it exists in the data. Now, you would think you can then just hide the person's name and get rid of the bias, and it
Yeah.
doesn't work because the AI system finds other things that it picks up, because you can hide the person's name, but maybe their interests or their
Oh, yeah.
college or their high school name or things like that give away hints,
Hmm.
which is not, the system doesn't know for sure it's male or female. Anyway, it's not intentionally trying to get rid of a male or female applicant. It's just saying these are the traits associated with people who have got promotions and offers in the past, and these are the people who have not got offers or not got promotions. And it finds other proxy variables that are correlated with gender and continues to have the bias. And similarly, there's been examples that the AI being used in courtrooms historically has had a race based bias. So if police are more likely to um, catch, say, a African American defendant, or a judge is more likely to sentence them or give them a harder sentence than all of that shows up in the data and the AI is replicating that. So that's the problem with AI. But again, if we are going to eliminate AI because it has biased, we have to ask, is the alternative very good? And there we go back to the point that AI picked up the bias because it was in the data. It's in the data because humans have biases. So the alternative is also very biased. And in fact, humans can hide behind their bias in so many different ways. So if there's somebody who has a bias in their recruiting decision and you ask, why did you not hire this lady, they can come up with explanations and justify it. uh, on the other hand, with AI, you can actually test it. You can run lots of simulations. You can say, what if I submit the same job application, but I'm going to change just the name or just this interest and see what happens. And then I can run these simulations and then evaluate the AI and conclude it has biases and then try to fix it. So, in my opinion, the risk with AI is that unlike biased humans, where a biased judge can affect a few thousand defendants in a courtroom, a biased recruiter can affect a few thousands applicants, but a biased AI can, when it's deployed at scale, affect millions of people. That's the risk with AI. But the opportunity with AI is the bias is easier to detect, easier to correct than human biases.
I see. I see. Very interesting. So, uh, and as algorithms become more autonomous, how can we make sure that they reflect the, let's say, the human values that we all share together? So one of the examples that we just discussed now is fairness, like to be fair with everyone, regardless of their gender, creed, or background, etc. So, but increasingly now, we're not anymore only talking about algorithms that recommend things or that are used for HR purposes. It looks like in the coming years, AI is going to become even more pervasive. And you just now mentioned agentic AI and doing things that human beings do. In those scenarios, bias may be more problematic because we are talking about bigger involvement, like involvement in bigger and more important things. So, in those scenarios, do you think that regulation will basically compel AI developers to mitigate those bias, or this rests mostly on the shoulders of the private sector?
Yeah, I think, look, this was going to require participation of everyone. It'll require the regulation, it'll require the private sector, it'll require a very informed civil society as well. Everyone will have to play a role. In fact, I can, talk about at least 2, 3 principles that are going to be important. There's many more we could talk about. And for your readers who are interested, you mentioned my book, which is called A Human's Guide to Machine Intelligence. And this is the book in which I covered a concept which I called an algorithmic bill of rights. And in that, I talk about certain key concepts that we want out of the algorithms and AI that are making decisions for us or about us. So some of those principles that I talk about are things like interpretability or transparency. So if you've got an AI system that is making, high stakes decisions, so like courtroom sentencing decisions or recruiting decisions, or even like newsfeed and influencing political views and so on, we want a few things. We want the creator of the algorithm to, even if they've used black box machine learning techniques like neural networks, which are very advanced machine learning algorithms, but are somewhat black box, very hard to
Explain.
explain.
Yeah.
So there are new techniques for explanations and interpretability that have come up in recent years. And so one thing that I kind of mention is that they have to invest in these kinds of approaches and be able to explain the decisions to a regulator or to any auditor or to themselves. The other one is around giving users some level of control. And so that's, for example, being able to say things like, I want, if a newsfeed algorithm is making choices for me, I can say, do more of this, less of that, or provide feedback. Not, don't give me these kinds of recommendations, or I didn't like this. So giving some level of control to the user. Human in the loop is a concept in AI. I think there's a lot of value in that. So these are certain principles, but taking a big picture to your, coming back to your question, can regulation help solve this? Can private sector, do they have to play a role? I think there's two, I'll mention a principle for the private sector, a principle for regulation, and a principle for us all as citizens. So for the private sector, one of the things that I have been advocating for is that AI based systems, especially those in some high stakes settings, go through an audit or a certification process. Now, by audit, I don't mean a regulatory audit, I just mean a certification. Like a lot of products we buy come with some safety seals and safety certifications. And these are done by independent third parties that will say, yes, this is certified organic. So if you're buying this and the manufacturer is claiming that this product is organic, I'm certifying that it is organic. Or I'm certifying that there's no lead in this food or in this paint or something like that that could affect the child. So those kinds of safety seals, I think, would be useful in AI-based systems, especially those in high-stakes settings, where a third-party independent organization can provide that. In fact, I've been part of a group. I've helped support. So there's a proposal currently in California to set up what is called a multi-stakeholder regulatory organization. And so this is not government regulation, but it's meant to be an independent organization. And it says multi-stakeholder. It will draw people from the private sector, from the government, from academia. And their job is going to be to help create a lot of these certification companies that can go provide these seals of approval. And companies on their own willingly go and say, hey, certify my AI and approve that it meets these 5, 10 requirements or claims that we are making. So that's one principle. I think for citizens like you and I, the other thing that I'll add here is it's going to be so tempting in the coming years to just adopt AI and outsource all the headache of decision making to AI. And while that's going to be so tempting, I think it's going to be useful and important for us to add some mindful friction into our use of AI. Even when AI can get the job done, we'll do it ourselves a little bit. And we'll do it because it'll help us make sure we're in control and we know what's going on, and we've not outsourced things without realizing that it's completely changing who we are and what we're buying and consuming. But it also is important just from a learning standpoint. I mentioned if 80-90% of the code can be written by AI, if developers start to use this, then even developers will forget to write code. In fact, a few years ago, there was a very interesting thing where the FAA asked pilots to reduce their use of autopilot, not because autopilot is not safe, but because they were worried that the pilots are losing their skills.
Oh,
So
okay.
so if something goes wrong and the autopilot doesn't work, the pilots are not as skilled as they used to be, especially
Wow.
as they use more and more of autopilot. And so the FAA said, hey, it's there, use it, but here are some new rules and guidelines on when and how to use it and when not to. And so we'll need to do something similar in our lives where AI will be able to get a lot of stuff done for us, but we should periodically add that mindful friction
Okay.
because it'll keep our skills up. It'll
Yeah.
also keep us aware of what's going on. And when things go wrong, we can take back control.
So you're saying we should consciously kind of reintroduce some manual work rather than outsourcing everything to AI, so that we don't lose the skills that you just mentioned, and you gave the example of the autopilot. I see what you mean. So this is one
Yeah.
way to mitigate that total outsourcing to machines.
Yes.
And this reminds me of my recent conversation with Professor John Lennox from the University of Oxford. We discussed concerns about AI diminishing human moral agency. You give the example of the judge who makes a decision on and he outsources part or maybe all of the decision to the AI. So in these scenarios, what if the AI is wrong? I mean, how can we decide? How can we draw the line between automation and accountability? Who's accountable, the judge or is it the machine? You see, so we have those dilemmas now.
Absolutely. I think this is a great question for the coming years. I think it's very important we keep the human accountable in the end, because if the human accountability is gone, then it's going to be extremely hard. And I'll give you examples from my setting. So if researchers are starting to use AI, and I'm in the camp where I say, yes, let researchers use AI tools. There are many who are opposed to it. You can use AI to do the literature review. You can use AI to summarize the literature review. You can use AI to write the paper. You can use AI to even do lots of the data analysis. In
Although
the end, if a
there is software now that detects that, like if it's AI generated, but still, I think there are like workarounds.
there are many workarounds, and it's very easy to beat those AI detection software. And in fact, the error rates of those AI detection software are high enough that, if for example, if you're going to say, hey, this person used AI and the system is 92% accurate, 92% is high, but at 8% failure rate, if you accuse somebody of having used of done plagiarism, that's a problem. Where if that person didn't do it and you accuse them, so the problem is these systems are not 100%. And so then what do we do? So my thinking is, why tell researchers you should not use AI? It's a great tool, go use it, but you are responsible for the end outcome. So in the end, if somebody detects there's plagiarism and there are sentences that are exactly borrowed from other papers or that are too similar, you're responsible for that. Don't later say AI did it for me, because then you can't have it both ways. Similarly, with students trying to use AI, there are many who are trying to resist students' use of AI. But the problem with that resistance is students are anyway using it. Then you use detectors, and then there is this false positive, false negative issue. Then you're stuck in that world. But if you allow them to use it, fine, but then they have to be responsible. If you say you can use it, but you're not responsible for plagiarism, then that's a problem. So yeah, I think coming back to like the moral agency question, like in a courtroom, sure, there may be algorithms that recommend to judges, but I think we have to train judges to question those algorithmic recommendations, kick the tires, so to say, on those recommendations, bring in their own agency and make decisions. And I'll give you one example as recent as yesterday for me. So I was looking to hire a research assistant. I have received lots of applications. I didn't have the time to go through every one of them. I uploaded all of this to AI, and I'll say ChatGPT, and I wrote a very sophisticated prompt on the criteria and asked it to give me a rank ordered list, explain for each candidate why not. So I had the AI system do that. But then I repeated the same with another version of the same provider. So say with OpenAI, I would do it with their 4.0 model, but I also do it with their O3, their reasoning model. And I compare the ranking. And then I said, okay, let me go now to Claude and paste the same prompt there. And Claude gave me a ranking. And when I see, hey, here's a candidate that ChatGPT or OpenAI rated lower, but Claude rated higher, then I kind of say, look, I think I have to still interview them. But I was trying to figure out which is the set of 4 candidates I'm going to interview out of the applications I got. So I did use AI, but the way I brought in some accountability is use multiple AI systems, but also not just treat it as I pressed a switch, I got 4 choices, and I'm going to interview those 4. But I had to go in and look at the inconsistencies, resolve that inconsistency myself, and things like that.
So you encourage the responsible usage of AI, whereby the human input is anyway always required to double check the results and double check if things are done correctly. This is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. There's a lot of the work we all do, there's a lot of grunt work there. We're just doing it. It's not necessarily fun. It's not necessarily super creative. But I think we can outsource it to AI, but I still feel human in the loop, accountable person who is validating, verifying, and then kind of approving the AI output.
And in the case of, if we go back to the case of the judge, if there's a problem with his judgment at the end of the day, if let's say he was unfair to the person who was being judged, at the end of the day, he has to be accountable for that, and not the machine that he used to come up with that result, right? This is what you're saying as well.
Yeah, I would say that if there was a clear evidence of a bias, then there would be a discussion, whatever the process is in the legal system, with the judge asking, why did you make this decision? And the answer cannot simply be because the AI said so.
Yes.
The answer could be AI said so, and then I did this, and this, and I ended up with the same conclusion as AI.
Okay.
And what did you do after you got the AI's output is also important. In those
Yeah.
high stakes settings where you cannot just put somebody's life at risk and say nobody is willing to take the blame for it, and an AI system that's a black box that's hard to explain
Yeah.
decided why this person was in jail for another 10 years.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay, these are very fascinating scenarios. And yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that. I mean, maybe 5 years back, I wouldn't have imagined that we would be having those conversations now. But yeah, this is like really surreal, but it's reality. So let's now talk about the impact of AI on jobs and the future of work. We've already touched upon that briefly, but Bill Gates has recently suggested that AI could reduce the work week to 2 to 3 days. Do you see this as a realistic prediction?
I think I have a similar prediction, which is, I don't know what's the exact number. Is it 2 or 3 days? But I remember when I was a kid growing up in India, my parents used to work on Saturdays. So they had a 6-day week. My generation has a 5-day week. And that 6 to 5 day wasn't driven by huge increases in productivity because of technology. It just so happened. But now AI has the ability to deliver huge increases in productivity. We haven't seen such huge increases in productivity in a long time. We last saw it, with industrialization and those kinds of things. But AI can deliver that. And if so, then I think, we have to do a couple things. One is, give people more time off to pursue their interests. But also, we don't want a situation where 20-30% of the workforce is working 6 days a week and the remaining 70% of the workforce is unemployed. And so we also want to balance that out a little bit.
Okay, okay. Do you think that these changes will impact also income and purpose and how people feel about work in general? Because I mean, obviously those changes are very fast. They're happening very fast. And there will surely be an impact on society, or let's call it the working society. How do you see that happening?
Yeah, look, I think it's going to have a huge impact on income, work, and so on. So I've actually blogged a fair bit about it. So I'll share the link, but give you the short version of my answer, and then your listeners can go read more on that. But I have a Substack, which is my AI newsletter. It's Hosanagar, my last name, hosanagar.substack.com. And in that, I have two articles. One is called AI and the Evolution of Humanity, and the other one is, framed as the economic impact of AI focused on labor. And specifically on AI and the evolution of humanity, one of the main points I make, I borrow a framework from the Maslow's hierarchy of needs system. And so if you look at Maslow's hierarchy, initially we are focused on physiological safety types of needs and food, shelter, security, and so on. But once we have this, we start to then look at love, belonging, growth, intellectual and personal growth, self-actualization, and things like that. I think as AI can help us create a world of abundance through increased productivity, through freeing up a lot of time, while keeping the same levels of output and therefore income, we can get to a world where we are moving up the Maslow's hierarchy more towards, these things like love, belonging, self-esteem, growth, self-actualization, and things like that. So I feel that's where we are headed. Now, for that to happen, it has to be the case that the value created by AI has to be evenly distributed, and which is not a given. I think one thing that's almost surely going to happen is that AI is going to shift more and more surplus away from labor to capital. So labor's ability to negotiate higher wages goes down when you have a attractive alternative that's cheaper, and that's AI. And so that places pressure on income and wage. Simultaneously, generally productivity increase comes with an increase in wage. So you have this twin effect where increase in productivity means every hour of work we do is worth more, so wages should go up. But at the same time, we're competing with AI. Whenever displacement can happen, and AIs will be much cheaper, which places a pressure on the wage as well. So there are both these effects. But either way, value is getting created, and that value is getting created mostly for capital, much more than for labor. And so one of the things regulators will need to focus on is how do we make sure the value that gets created is not locked among a few owners of capital, and it somehow gets evenly distributed. So this is going to be one of the biggest regulatory challenges in the coming years, which is to create a regulatory taxation regime, as well as a set of economic environments that encourage entrepreneurship, where job creation is valued by society and highly rewarded by society. So entrepreneurship has to be rewarded, where you need to protect labor in certain ways. You need to encourage capital as well, but you need to make sure, perhaps through taxation, that you create a system where all the value created is not captured by a few. So it'll have to be a balance of all of these factors for us to get there.
Okay. Okay, very interesting. Also, another, let's say, issue that I see with regulation is that AI development is very fast. So now we're probably writing a regulation for the AI of last year. So
Yes.
how do you see how do you see proper regulation happening with this very high speed of AI that is outpacing regulation all the time?
Yeah, look, I think it's going to be extremely hard for regulators to keep up. They have to, and they have to keep coming in and regulating. But you're right. Regulation alone is not going to solve it, which was why I was mentioning earlier that regulation by governments alone will not protect all of us. We need the private sector to take its responsibility seriously. And that's where things like what I was mentioning, the multi-stakeholder regulatory organization, which is private regulation or private governance, that's going to be extremely important. This will also require citizens to get educated about the implications of all these systems and hold private companies accountable as well. So it'll require us to do that. So I think the way I'll summarize it is that regulation is necessary, and we will expect a bunch of regulation. It will not be sufficient because of what you're saying. The space is moving too fast, and regulators will not be able to keep up. And so we'll have to simultaneously see private governance, and we'll have to see citizen education. All of these things will have to happen together.
Yeah, absolutely. Kartik, I'd like to know your opinion about a topic that is very much the subject of one of Harari's book, so Homo Deus, I think. So he talks about the concept of transhumanism and how in the future technology and AI will be embedded in human beings, and we might kind of evolve as human beings. What is your opinion on that view? Is this likely to happen in the near future, or maybe down the line?
Yeah. So I think there is likely to be a few different kinds of evolution that's going to happen. The first one is that AI itself is going to be another form of intelligence that's going to be around us. There are researchers already studying whether you can create sentient AI or whether AI can eventually become conscious. And in fact, some early researchers say that the process through which on Earth molecules started gaining consciousness and so on, it is not just magic. There is systemic process behind it, and it is possible, some folks believe, to create AI that is conscious.
Some people think, sorry to cut you, some people think that consciousness is probably related to quantum mechanics, like quantum events. So, I mean, there are lots of theories of consciousness again, but yeah, one of them is this one. And
Exactly. I've seen that theory too. So,
yeah,
so I think there's the world in which AI can become conscious. Then there is the world of technology integration. When you look at things like Neuralink and other things where we're talking about
yes,
creating, many terms for
chips.
it, chips and so
Yeah,
on. And so what we are doing is there's a biological brain along with an artificial neural network working in tandem and
wow.
helping to do things. So there's that kind of world. So then there's that evolution happening. So one evolution is artificially created intelligence that
Yeah,
evolves, that may or may not eventually become conscious.
okay.
Then there is human beings who go in and
Augmented human beings,
augment
Yeah,
augmented human beings. There's that piece as well.
yeah,
And then there is finally a very subtle kind of evolution in humanity itself. And that subtle evolution is, you look at the fact that you look at industrialization and you look at how human society has evolved in the last few hundred years. We used to be a society primarily driven by muscle, by brawn, and industrialization came in and it changed society in big ways. We've become an information economy, moving from hard work in fields or mines or wherever to knowledge work has also allowed lots of women to enter the workforce. It's allowed us to create a society that's more egalitarian. So when information work now gets done by AI, that's going to be another form of evolution for humans. We might go somewhere else. And if I use the Maslow's hierarchy, then it may be that we move towards the love and belonging stage, hopefully. And so that's where our society also starts to transform around the kinds of work we are doing and the kinds of activities we are engaged with is more around leadership, empathy, creativity
spirituality.
versus
Yeah,
spirituality.
yeah,
Absolutely. And
yeah.
those are the kinds of things that may matter more. So
Maybe now
there's
we have
that
more
kind of
time. We have
evolution.
more time for that now that we've outsourced the tasks to the machines. We can focus
One
on
hopes so. One
yeah,
hopes so, but it could also be a devil. An idle mind is a devil's workshop, and so if we have
yes,
nothing to do, people end up with drugs and video games,
yeah,
and not that video games are bad, but when it becomes a point of addiction, then that's a problem. And so
yes,
we could
yes.
also be in a, what's that movie from Pixar? Uh,
Wall,
where we're all in space. No, it is Wally,
not
I think.
Wally.
Yeah.
Wally, yes, maybe
Wally, I think that's the one where
the
people have
old one.
nothing to do.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah, the
probably
old
Wally.
one. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
So, who
Yeah,
knows? We could end up in a world where instead of consciousness, we're just all, becoming less socially engaged as well.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Kartik, what excites you the most about the future of AI? I mean, we've talked about what worries you the most now, but what excites you the most about the future of AI?
Yeah, I think what excites me most is two things. One, in the short term, we are in the middle of like the big great change and we don't realize it, but life in 20 years and 100 years will be so different than before, and we were part of the generation where it all happened. And what is exciting about it is it's not like the future is a given. It's not like there's any specific future that is inevitable. There are many futures, and what we do today will shape that. I just mentioned two futures, extreme versions. One is the Wally like version, where we're all disengaged, I don't know, an anxious, depressed, addicted generation, or a world where we're moving up the Maslow's hierarchy into love and belonging, into self actualization, into spirituality, and so on, and understanding ourselves and our consciousness much better. And so I think what's exciting is we can shape that future based on what
Yes.
we do today.
And as long, I think, as human beings make a conscious decision to keep control over AI and then make it like program it in a way that it has the human's interest as a north star, then that could probably prevent some of those. It can act as a guardrail against AI destroying humanity, because it may well destroy humanity if it goes out of control. Correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, is AI an existential threat to humanity? Well, that specific question is debatable. But is AI going to change the course of humanity for the better and possibly also for the worse? There's no debate about that. There is no doubt that AI can have a huge impact on how the next 100 years look like for humanity. So I think we all have to play a role in helping shape that.
For sure, for sure. Kartik, I know that you are about, or you have launched actually recently, a new podcast called Creative Intelligence. So this sounds very exciting. Can you talk a bit more about this new project?
Yes, of course. Thanks for asking, Imad. So the project is a podcast called Creative Intelligence, and in it, I'm trying to explore some of the more pressing questions facing us, specifically at the intersection of AI, um, creativity, human potential, and things like that. So, how can AI be a source of good? How can it help us thrive? What can we do to ensure that we are all thriving in an AI world? So, those are the kinds of things I want to explore in that. Not unlike your podcast, you're interested in lots of these kinds of issues. My focus is specifically on AI and specifically on how we thrive in an AI world. So, in fact, the first episode just launched earlier this week. Our first guest was Sal Khan, who is the founder of Khan Academy. And he and I talked about how AI will impact the future of education. So, we talked about both Sal's optimism for what are the positives that can come out of AI, but also some of the concerns. Like concern I raised with him was AI will become a crutch and students will use it and it'll become a substitute for learning. And so how do we address that? So that's an example of the kind of conversation we have. We have a few others coming up where we'll explore what kinds of skills are relevant in the near future. We'll try and understand the people behind AI and their motivations and why some of the godfathers of modern AI have become skeptical and worried about AI in recent years. We'll talk about AI and consciousness, bunch of these kinds of topics, but mostly around how do we thrive as a society and as a humanity with AI.
Well, that sounds very, very interesting, and I wish you the best of luck with this podcast. And I'll definitely check it out. And I recommend our listeners as well to check out your new podcast. So remember, Creative Intelligence by Kartik Hosanagar,
Yeah,
and
they can
that
find it by
yeah
the. Oh, sorry, I was going
yeah
to
no
say they
go on
can
go
just
on.
find. Yeah, they can just find it on YouTube by just typing in my name, Kartik Hosanagar, Creative Intelligence, or go into my Substack, hosanagar.substack.com, and they'll find it there as well.
Absolutely. Kartik, any other projects that are kind of like that you kind of excited about aside of your podcast? Are you working on are you writing a new book maybe or preparing to write a new book? Because the first one was very interesting as well and very, I would say, very visionary because you launched it like 5 years back, right? It's like in 2020.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I wrote it in 2017, 2018. It got launched in 2018, 2019. Yeah, so now it's been
2019.
six
Yes.
plus, yeah, 2019, 6 years since it was launched. Uh, yeah, so I think I've been exploring another book in the AI space. I've had two, three different ideas. One of the challenges in the AI space is that things change so fast and the book publication cycle is so slow that by the time the book comes out things would have changed quite dramatically. So that was the reason why I decided to explore a podcast format for some of the ideas I had. But through that I do hope to take some of the most interesting lasting ideas and convert it into a book which is going to be on AI and the future of humanity, but mostly uh, not just pure philosophy, but also like actual tangible steps or actions that we can all take in our lives to make sure that we are in control in an AI world. So that's my next book project. Other than that, I've also started to get interested in how, we spent a lot of time talking about how AI is influencing choice, and it's already been happening. I think the next version of that is going to be people making decisions by going and doing the research on chat gpt and other systems, and ultimately AI agents making choices for them. So I'm also starting to do some research on that and explore how we can create new systems to both help consumers and also help firms to create better matches in terms of making sure companies can reach their consumers, and consumers can reach the product or company that's right for them. So that's a research project that we may productize in the near future.
Okay, interesting. And that brings us to the end of this fascinating conversation. A huge thank you to you, Professor Hosanagar, for sharing your insights on AI and helping us better understand not just where AI is headed, but how we as humans can navigate these exciting times. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me, Imad. A great set of questions, awesome discussion. Thank you for your curiosity and questions.
Thanks a lot, and best of luck with your new projects and podcast. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.